Okay, so as we continue our peer review of my brother Ron Dalton Jr.'s claim, I want to, before we look at the dew, the manna, and then the quails, I want to restate my purpose here. In this peer review, I will be critically examining the speaker's assertions. Again, my approach begins with a thorough fact-checking from a biblical perspective. I'm going to be utilizing scriptural evidence to verify the accuracy of the claims made. I believe that by delving into the specific passages and details provided within the biblical text, I'm able to clarify the historical context of some of the speaker's mentions. Now, following this biblical analysis, I will present my position on the topic from a scholarly, historical viewpoint. When I do this, I will incorporate broader historical and cultural insights, which I believe will offer a well-rounded perspective that considers both biblical and historical scholarship. And I'm hoping that through this balanced and analytical review, I intend to provide a comprehensive understanding of the topic, addressing not only the factual accuracy of the speaker's assertions, but also exploring the implications and interpretations of these historical events. With that out of the way, let's listen in to this claim by the speaker.
When we look at when the Israelites in the wilderness, God gave them quail, and it says in the morning there was dew on the ground,
Yes.
and quail. How can you have dew on sand?
Right.
When we look at when the Israelites in the wilderness, God gave them quail, and it says in the morning there was dew on the ground,
Yes.
and quail. How can you have dew on sand?
Right.
When we look at when the Israelites in the wilderness, God gave them quail, and it says in the morning there was dew on the ground,
Yes.
and quail. How can you have dew on sand?
So, my brother Ron Dalton Jr. asks how dew can fall on sand. The speaker seems to imply skepticism about the presence of dew on sand, which might suggest questioning the traditional geographical understanding of this biblical event. The speaker mentioned that when the Israelites were in the desert, God provided them with quail, and in the morning there was dew on the ground. Again, the speaker, Ron Dalton Jr., questions how dew could form on sand, implying skepticism about the traditional narrative. Let's fact check this. Actually, dew does fall on sand under the right conditions. Dew occurs when the surface temperature drops to what we call the dew point, causing moisture in the air to condense into liquid droplets. This can happen on sand, especially in desert environments where temperatures can drop significantly at night. The sand cools down quickly after sunset, and if the air is humid enough, dew can form on the sand's surface. This phenomenon is more common in coastal deserts or areas where there is some humidity in the air. So, yes, dew can form on sand, and yes, dew does fall in the Sinai Peninsula. The region's climate and geographical conditions allow for the formation of dew, especially during cooler nights. So this should not be an issue at all. Maybe the speaker was not aware of this, so we can let it slide. But dew does fall on sand, and dew does actually occur in the Sinai Peninsula, where we are locating the children of Israel after they left Egypt, according to the biblical myth. Now, I believe that the real question to ponder on is how manna, if you want to call it bread, it's up to you. But I believe the real question to ponder is how manna could possibly fall from the sky. That should be the speaker's focus, not the natural occurrence of dew. It's important to note that while dew is a normal phenomenon, manna descending from the heavens is anything but ordinary. This highlights the miraculous nature of the event. Therefore, the speaker using this miracle to pinpoint the location of the land of Canaan is futile, as such an event could happen anywhere, since it was a miracle. It could have happened on Pluto, it could have happened on Saturn, it could have happened on Mars. Why? It falls in the context of a miracle. Let's read the text carefully to confirm this. Exodus 16. They set out from Elim, and all the congregation of the people of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had departed from the land of Egypt. And the whole congregation of the people of Israel grumbled against Moshe and Aaron in the wilderness. And the people of Israel said to them, Would that we had died by the hand of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the meat pots and ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Then Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh said to Moshe, Behold, I am about to rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, that I may test them whether they would walk in my law or not. On the 6th day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather daily. So Moshe and Aaron said to the people of Israel, At evening you shall know that it was Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh who brought you out of the land of Egypt. And in the morning you shall see the glory of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, because he has heard your grumbling against Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. For what are we that you grumble against us? So you see, Moshe is saying that you will see the glory of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, putting it in the context of a miracle. So this episode is depicted as showcasing the magnificence of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, framing it within the context of a miracle. The author evidently aims to depict the dew and manna as miraculous events. According to the text, these occurrences are indeed described as miraculous. So, my brother Ron Dalton Jr. cannot ask the question he asks about how dew can fall on sand. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh could have made it fall anywhere that he wanted it to, because this is in the context of seeing the glory of God, which puts it in the context of a miracle. So that question, I don't think cuts it here. The context doesn't support the speaker's question, even though dew naturally falls on sand, as evidenced by the Sinai Peninsula. Okay, now let me highlight what the author is doing and use it to pinpoint the location of the land of Canaan. I repeat that. I'm going to demonstrate, I'm going to show, I'm going to highlight what the biblical author is doing. And in highlighting this, I'm going to use it to pinpoint the location of the land of Canaan. The author is actually presenting natural events as if they were miraculous. Again, the biblical author in this narrative of the dew, the manna, and the quails is actually presenting natural events as if they were miraculous. I'm going to pursue this, which challenges the speaker's claim regarding the location of the land of Canaan. Let's delve into this further. I plan to use the quail again, the manna again, and the dew to discuss the location of Canaan. What information do we have about the manna? Let's start with the manna. What information do we have about the manna? Let's stay here for a bit. Exodus 16. They set out from Elim, and all the congregation of the people of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month after they had departed from the land of Egypt. Now, this is exactly 1 month since they left Egypt. And in about 2 weeks, they would reach Sinai. They left in April in the spring. So we are in the month of May here, if this is exactly 1 month after they left. So I want you to put this in your spirit. We are in the spring season. It's important. Verses 13. It came to pass in the evening that the quails went up and covered the camp. And in the morning, there was a layer of dew around the camp. The layer of dew went up, and behold, on the surface of the desert, a fine, bare substance as fine as frost on the ground. When the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, "It is manna," but they did not know what it was. And Moshe said to them, "It is the bread that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh has given you to eat." The question here is, was it bread? Was it really bread? No, it wasn't bread. It was something unknown to them. So they called it what? What? In different languages, it was referred to as man, and you got it, manna or manu in Old Canaanite dialect, man in Biblical Aramaic, manna in Jewish Aramaic, manna in Syriac, and mini in my dialect, Gadangbe. All these terms translate to what? Like, what is this? Like, what? So when they saw it, they called it what? Manna. Let's explore what this mysterious thing really is or really was. I'm saying is because it still happens today. Verse 16. This is the thing that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh has commanded. Gather of it each one according to his eating capacity, an omer for each person, according to the number of persons, each one for those in his tent you shall take. And the children of Israel did so. They gathered, both the one who gathered much and the one who gathered little. And they measured it with an omer, and whoever gathered much did not have more, and whoever gathered little did not have less. Each one according to his eating capacity they gathered. And Moshe said to them, let no one leave over any of it until morning. But some men did not obey Moshe and left over some of it until morning. And it bred worms and became putrid. And Moshe became angry with them. They gathered it morning by morning, each one according to his eating capacity. And when the sun grew hot, it melted. It came to pass on the 6th day that they gathered a double portion of bread, 2 omers for each one. And all the princes of the community came and reported it to Moshe. So he said to them, that is what Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh spoke. Tomorrow is a rest day, a holy Shabbat to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. Bake whatever you wish to bake, and cook whatever you wish to cook, and all the rest leave over to keep until morning. So they left it over until morning, as Moshe had commanded, and it did not become putrid, and not a worm was in it. And Moshe said, eat it today, for today is a Shabbat to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. Today you will not find it in the field. Let's go to verse 31. The house of Israel named it manna, and it was like coriander seed. It was white, and it tasted like a wafer with honey. Awesome. So this is what the text tells us about the manna. We get more details about this in the book of Numbers. What the manna is, we get more details. Let's gather some more details so we can conclude this. Numbers 11. Now the manna was like coriander seed, and its appearance was like the appearance of crystal. The people walked about and gathered it. Then they ground it in a mill or crushed it in a mortar, cooked it in a pot, and made it into cakes. It had a taste like the taste of oil cake. When the dew descended on the camp at night, the manna would descend upon it. So, manna, which fell during the night, was flaky and as fine as frost. It resembled coriander seed, was white in appearance, yet also had the hue of bdellium, and tasted like wafers with honey and rich cream. We are told that it was collected, ground between millstones, or pounded in a mortar, boiled in a pot, and formed into cakes. Any manna not consumed the same day would become infested with maggots and produce a foul odor. Awesome. So, what exactly is this mysterious substance known as manna? Interestingly, a similar biological phenomenon still occurs today in the Sinai Peninsula. I'll repeat that again. A similar biological phenomenon still occurs today where? In the Sinai Peninsula, linked to the biblical tradition of manna. We have this tree or this bush called the tamarisk bush. This bush thrives in semi-arid areas of the Mediterranean region. It hosts two types of sucking insects. We have one in the lowlands and then the other one in the mountainous areas of the Sinai Peninsula. These two insects, the one that is located in the lowlands is the Tributina manipara, which is a mealybug species that is native to the Middle East and Southern Europe. So that is the Tributini manipara. And then in the mountainous areas of the Sinai Peninsula, we have the Najacoccus serpentinus. So we have these two insects. One in the lowlands, and then we have the other in the mountainous areas of the Sinai Peninsula. Why am I mentioning these two insects? These scale insects, what do? They extract sap, which is rich in carbohydrates, from this tamarisk bush, and then they excrete the excess onto the twigs as tiny globules. Again, these scaled insects extract sap rich in carbohydrates from the tamarisk bush and excrete the excess onto the twigs as tiny globules. These globules quickly crystallize due to rapid evaporation and fall to the ground. These globules are sweet, sticky, and edible, but they must be collected before the heat rises. Otherwise, ants will consume them. Let me repeat it again, and I want you to read the biblical text of how it describes the manna and the instructions given to the Israelites. Let me explain it again from the top. I am saying that this phenomenon that we read in the biblical text happens today in the Sinai Peninsula. How does this happen? We have this bush called the tamarisk bush. This bush thrives in semi-arid areas of the Mediterranean region. There are two types of insects that make this happen. One insect is in the lowlands, and then the other one is in the Sinai Peninsula. Now, the mountainous areas of the Sinai Peninsula. Now, these scale insects, they extract sap, which is rich in carbohydrates, from the tamarisk, and then they excrete the excess, this sap, they excrete the excess sap onto the twigs as tiny globules. These globules quickly crystallize due to rapid evaporation and fall to the ground. These globules, or if you want to call them drops or balls, whatever you want to call them, but these globules quickly crystallize due to the rapid evaporation and fall to the ground. These globules are sweet, sticky, and edible, but they must be collected before the heat rises. So you have to collect them in the morning before the heat rises. Otherwise, ants will consume them. Sounds very close to the description and instructions given in the biblical text. Where exactly are these phenomena observed? When does this natural phenomenon usually occur? In the Sinai Peninsula. The manna tree, as it's usually called, associated with the tamarisk bush or the tamarisk tree, produces its sweet, edible substance primarily during the warmer months from late May through June. Put that in your spirit. Remember when the Israelites left? I said this is happening a month and 2 weeks after they have left, which puts them where? Exactly the time frame when the tamarisk tree usually produces its sweet, edible substance. In regions like the Sinai Peninsula, the secretion from the tamarisk bush caused by these scale insects typically occurs in late spring to early summer. This is when the conditions are optimal for the insects to thrive and produce the sugary excretions that crystallizes into what is traditionally referred to as manna. This occurs between when? May and June, precisely when the author of the Exodus myth had the Israelites depart from Egypt, placing them right in the midst of this phenomenon. The secretion of manna from the tamarisk tree or the tamarisk bush caused by scale insects typically lasts for a relatively short period, often around 6 weeks. Now, where are we speaking about? Which location are we speaking of? We are speaking of the Sinai Peninsula, not sub-Saharan Africa. Looks like the evidence is pointing the other way, not where my brother, Dalton Jr., wants it to point towards. In the next video, we will tackle the natural occurrence of the quails. Stay tuned.